So, hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar provided to you by TeamDrive Systems. Think smarter, share safer. My name is Kenneth Flanders, and today we're going to explain how the virtual file system works, how to enable it for specific spaces, and how to configure automatic cleanup to save local disk space. One of the problems the virtual file system tackles is when you have large amounts of data in the cloud, but only a small amount of storage on your laptop. Normally, when you sync a space, everything is downloaded to your computer. With the virtual file system, TeamDrive shows the contents of the space as if all the files were available on your local hard drive, but they're actually just placeholders. They take up zero space until you double click to download them. In this session, we'll cover installing the virtual file system for Windows, plus important setup steps for macOS users, how to move an existing space into the virtual file system, how to spot the difference between a virtual file and a real file, and how to automate disk cleanup for maximum security and space saving. So let's start by opening the installer. The virtual file system can be installed along with TeamDrive during the initial setup. However, if you did not activate the virtual file system during your initial setup, you simply need to run the installer again. You don't need to uninstall first, just simply run the installer again, exactly as we are about to do in my example. So during the installation, after you've chosen an installation directory, so let's go through. So yes, we accept the agreement. And here's our installation directory. This is the default directory. I haven't changed anything. We can leave everything as normal. So after you have chosen an installation directory, you'll be able to select additional components you would like to have installed. As a default setting, everything is checked. But what's key here for us is that the virtual file system is checked. So once you have checked this, you'll be able to install the virtual file system. The shell extension is a different feature. I also recommend leaving that on. That's for the context menu and the overlays, the green check marks, the gray check marks. These are important for being able to determine whether a file is locally available or only in the cloud. And this will come later. So we've enabled the virtual file system to be installed. So we'll just click next. And now setup is ready to begin, and we can start the installation. Now for your initial setup, you will be prompted to, well, at the end of every TeamDrive installation, you will be prompted to restart the computer. And if this is your initial installation of TeamDrive, yes, it's important that you restart your computer afterwards. But in our case here, since we're just adding, since TeamDrive is already installed and we're just making sure that we've added the virtual file system, it's not necessary for us to restart the computer after we've run the installer. And eventually, you know, at the end of the workday or the end of the day, we'll shut down and that will count as our restart. But for this session, it will not be necessary for us to restart. Also important, very important, if you're using a Mac, please take note of the following important information. Due to licensing changes, the required component for the virtual file system, which is called FUSE for macOS or macFUSE, is no longer included in the TeamDrive installer. You must download and install macFUSE manually before the virtual file system will work. You can find a link to the macFUSE installer in the TeamDrive FAQ section, and we've also provided a link to the FAQ entry in the description of this video. Okay, so our installation is complete. Yes, we would like to add TeamDrive to the auto start, so it starts with our computer. And again, once you are prompted to restart, you can just click. For this session, you can just click no. Okay, so now that we have installed the virtual file system, now we can start by moving our first space to the virtual file system. So we'll just open our TeamDrive app. And in our TeamDrive app, you see we have two spaces. My first space, which I created in another webinar, and a virtual file system space. So this is a space I configured for this webinar, and we can see that it is already marked as offline available. That's what this little symbol here means, that the space is offline available. So it's a normal space. It's not yet a virtual file system space. So if you have a different view, for example, if you are using the landscape view um, of TeamDrive, you will need to, I can show it here, you will need to click on active spaces to go to your spaces. And from there, you just find the space for which you would like to enable the virtual file system and hover the mouse over the space and then click on I. From there, you go to space location. So we click on space location, and then you will see a small switch here where it says mount space in virtual file system. And that's what we would like to do. So we enable this, and we must confirm that we really want to do this at the bottom of the screen. So in here it says move the space to the virtual file system, and we select move. Okay, so once we've done that, we go back to our active spaces and we'll see the status of the space. It was very quick. It said moving space to virtual file system. So if we now, so one thing that we can see immediately is that the space is no longer marked as offline available. So we can see here with my first space, we see this symbol here, which means the space is offline available, which means everything is downloaded automatically. And here we can see that this is not the case for the virtual file system space because we have moved everything to the virtual file system. And the default setting for the virtual file system is that your data is not offline available. And this is key for us to be able to save space, save storage. Okay, so let's just, so now we need to go to the file system. Okay, let's see, file system window here. Okay, there we go. So we're still in the downloads folder. So once you have mounted a space to the virtual file system, you will see that TeamDrive appears here as if it were a network drive. As a default drive letter, it's the drive T for TeamDrive. Um, this letter can be changed to any letter that's available. This can be done in the TeamDrive settings. But again, you will see TeamDrive listed as the virtual spaces. You will see it listed as its own virtual network drive. So if we click here, we can see there's my virtual file system space that we just moved to the virtual file system. And you notice here that we have that the space has a gray check mark on it. So let's enter the space and we see I have quite a few files in it. The space, for my example, the space isn't that big. There are a lot of files in there, but it's small, I would say. Maybe only 1,000, 1,500 files. So there aren't that many files. But you can see everything has a gray check mark. Okay, so what does the gray icon or the gray check mark mean? We actually call them overlays. So what does the gray overlay icon mean? So the gray icon means that the file is a placeholder. It is visible in your folder. You can see its name and its size, but it's not physically on your hard drive. It takes up no space. One important thing to keep in mind is the file must be downloaded before you're able to open it. Windows or macOS for that matter cannot open a file that is not physically there. So if you try to open the file, um, in some cases, if you try to open the file, you may receive an error message if the application you're using to open the file opens the file faster than your operating system is able to download the file. Then you receive an error message. If that happens, you simply need to close the error message, allow the file to download, and try to open it again. Alternatively, you can right click on the file and you have additional options. Um, they're not shown right now on the screen. You have additional options and you have the option to download the file. So you can always download the file beforehand. So I'm currently downloading file A, and we'll see that A was downloaded, also downloaded B as well. And now we see that we have a green check mark. So what green means is that the file is locally available in the file system. And when I try to open the file, it opens immediately. So again, this is a great way to have access to spaces that have large amounts of files in them and um, large amounts of files, 5,000, 10,000 or more, and to be able to access everything without having to store everything on your local device or on your local hard drive. And again, once you're ready to access a file, you can simply double click it. It will be downloaded in real time. We can try that with C. We just did a double click. And in some cases, you will see that when you try to download a file, um, other files are also downloaded. It's just because the way when the files are so small, they're packaged a certain way on the server. So multiple small files may be packaged together. So when you download one, it will automatically download the other files that are contained in the package as well. So this is why when I downloaded C, that D and E were also downloaded, and that's also why when I downloaded A, that B was downloaded as well. Okay, so that's all we need for the file system and the icons. Let's see. Okay, so part three, advanced configuration. So we will just open our TeamDrive app again. And once we have our TeamDrive app open, we need to go into the TeamDrive. We need to go into the TeamDrive settings. So to get to the settings, you simply click on the widget here. In portrait view, it's at the top right, and in landscape view, you will find this widget at the top left. So we click there, and once you have opened the settings, you want to navigate to the space settings tab. Again, if you are in portrait mode, you have the title space settings. If you're in landscape mode, it will simply say space. So once we've clicked there, we need to go to the virtual space settings section here. And what we're looking for here is virtual files cleanup time. So the default setting is 4 hours. And what that means is if you haven't touched the file in 4 hours, it will automatically be cleaned up from your local from your hard drive. And so it will go from the green overlay to the gray overlay. It's still safe in the cloud. It's just removed locally to free up space. And this is also a great security feature as it ensures that sensitive documents don't linger on your local device forever if you aren't using them. And just another side note, also what I mentioned when showing the the virtual the virtual hard disk, where I said it looked like a network drive with the drive T for TeamDrive. Here you have the possibility to change the drive letter. For example, if you already have a hard drive using drive letter T, or if you just have a different preference, you can go here and configure a different drive letter. And as far as the cleanup times, you can go and configure a different cleanup time. Again, 4 hours is the standard setting. And an important final tip when it comes to automatic cleanup, if you want the automatic cleanup to work, do not mark your virtual file system space or folders within that space as offline available. That would be to use this button here, enable offline availability, or on the info page, if you go here and enable the offline availability. You do not want to do that. If you mark the virtual file system space or any of its contents as offline available, it will be ignored from cleanup, which means it remains on your local hard disk, um, and that defeats the purpose of using the virtual file system. The virtual file system is intended to be able to see the local contents without having it stored uh, on your local hard drive. So if for whatever reason you have the need to store everything offline available, then I would recommend disabling the virtual file system. For example, to do that, you would just go back to the info page, space location, and unmount the space from the virtual file system. And once you do that, the offline availability will automatically be turned back on and everything will be stored on your local hard drive um, as per default, as the TeamDrive standard. Again, the virtual file system is intended for users or intended for you to be able to see everything virtually and then for you to be able to access the files that you need in real time as long as you have an internet connection. So, in summary, use the virtual file system to save space. Again, if you have the need to mark everything as offline available, it would be my recommendation to not use the virtual file system. Just simply unmount it as a virtual space, or unmount the space from the virtual file system and store everything locally per the TeamDrive standard on your local hard drive. So yes, use the virtual file system to save space. Um, in terms of the icon overlays, gray means cloud only, and green means that the files are locally available but also in the cloud. Um, macOS users, you must install macFUSE manually, in order for the virtual file system to be able to work. Again, um, macFUSE is not shipped in the TeamDrive for Mac OS installer. And last but not least, use auto cleanup to keep your drive empty and secure. And if you haven't yet um, installed TeamDrive or used TeamDrive, feel free to download it now. Go to our website, teamdrive.com, and on the downloads page, you will find TeamDrive available for whichever operating system you're using, whether it be Windows, well, the standard operating systems, Windows, macOS, and also Linux. TeamDrive is also available for Android and iOS devices. So, with that said, thank you for joining, and I definitely recommend that you go ahead and try converting a large space to a virtual space and see how much storage you can save on your local hard drive. And if there are any questions in the chat, then I will definitely love to answer those now. Okay, so at the moment, I do not see any questions in the chat. So again, thank you for joining, and continue using TeamDrive. And if you haven't started, go ahead and get started today.